The story begins with the brutal murder of a family. Both husband and wife were killed inside their house, and that too in a horrifying manner. After investigation, the police discovered a shocking truth. Nothing was stolen from the house. There were no signs of forced entry on the doors or windows, which meant the killer didn't come from outside. Or maybe it was something else entirely. But the real shock came when the police found the body of a young girl in the basement. This girl wasn't even connected to the family. Now the big question was, who was this girl? And how was her death linked to this entire case? The incident created a huge stir in the media, and the police had to uncover the truth behind the corpse by the next morning. So the investigation was handed over to an experienced forensic expert, who was also assisted by his son, Austin, that night. As soon as the body was brought in for examination, the cat present there started growling in a strange manner, as if it had sensed something extremely terrifying. Austin began examining the body. The most shocking thing was that there were no visible wounds or injuries on the girl's body, but her pupils had turned cloudy, something that usually happens several days after death. Yet her body hadn't turned stiff, and her skin felt as soft as a living person's. As the investigation progressed, they were stunned. The girl's bones were severely broken, and a unique kind of soil was found in her hair and nails, the kind that is only found in mountainous regions. When Austin opened her mouth, he saw that her tongue had been cut off with some sharp object. But strangely, there were no bite marks on the tongue. That means she didn't cut it herself. At that moment, Austin's father, Tommy, said that he had seen a similar case before in human trafficking cases where girls are brutally harassed, and sometimes even their tongues are cut off. Just as he finished speaking, blood started dripping from the girl's nose, and a fly came out of it. According to popular belief, this is considered a major bad omen, but both father and son ignored it and continued with the autopsy. Suddenly, the radio kept nearby turned on by itself, and the painful scream of a woman could be heard. They thought it was probably just some radio program, but when they cut open the body, fresh blood started flowing, something that shouldn't happen in a dead body. As they dug deeper into the investigation, they discovered that the girl might have worn tight-fitting garments since childhood, which had made her waist unusually thin. This habit dated back hundreds of years, and when they checked her lungs, they found them completely black, as if she had been burned in smoke for a long time. They also found burn marks on her internal organs. One thing was clear from the condition of the body. Had these wounds been on the outside, the scene would have been so horrific with blood and flesh that anyone would tremble upon seeing it. But her skin was completely clean, smooth and soft. Both of them were trying to understand this mystery when suddenly a strong lightning bolt cracked outside, followed by roaring thunder. Then a strange noise from the hallway distracted them. Austin immediately went to check, but he didn't see anything there. When he turned around and looked in the mirror, he saw no reflection, just the faint shadow of a person. Nervously, he went in that direction, but the shadow had already vanished. He could no longer understand what was happening. Just then, the ventilation duct above opened. Austin climbed onto a stool to take a look. It was pitch dark inside, but suddenly he saw something moving. When he shone his flashlight, he saw it was their cat, covered in blood and taking its last breaths. That cat was the last memory of his mother. Seeing the animal writhing in pain, Tommy, with a heavy heart, set it free from its suffering. They then resumed examining the corpse. Upon opening the stomach, a strange black object was found, a half-digested flower bud. When Tommy compared it with the books, he realized it was datura, a poisonous and hallucinogenic plant. They couldn't understand how that flower ended up inside a human stomach. Just then, a warning was broadcast over the radio. A terrible storm was approaching, even though the weather had been perfectly clear for the past few days. Austin suggested they stop the examination for today and continue in the morning, but his father refused. They had promised the police to find the cause of death tonight itself. He assumed his son was just in a hurry to meet his girlfriend. A little while later, they found a small lump in the intestines. When they opened it, they discovered a broken human tooth belonging to a woman. The piece of cloth wrapped around it had ancient occult symbols drawn on it. Only a few numbers were somewhat recognizable. Austin was now convinced that this woman had been used as a ritual sacrifice, but the reason behind it remained a mystery. Suddenly, a creepy children's poem started playing on the radio, making the atmosphere even more terrifying. Austin again insisted they should leave, but Tommy was completely engrossed in the investigation as they had now begun examining beneath the skin of the corpse. And what they saw next was enough to shake their souls. Beneath the corpse's skin, the same deep tantric symbols were carved. Both of them were shocked, and suddenly, the two bodies kept in the freezer disappeared. Now the situation was slipping out of control. Tommy called out to his son and said they needed to get out of there immediately. But just then, the entire building's electricity went out, and even the backup generator stopped working. The elevator wasn't working, so the father and son helplessly made their way to the basement. There was a small skylight there that opened to the ground outside. But no matter how hard they tried, it wouldn't open. They realized that during the storm outside, a large tree from the courtyard had broken and fallen right onto that window, completely blocking the way. There was no mobile signal, and Austin started cursing in frustration. Just then, Tommy remembered that there was a landline phone in his office. He quickly went to call the police. But strangely, no one could hear his voice on the other end. And within seconds, the call disconnected. Both of them were wondering what to do next when Austin sensed some movement near the door. Listening carefully, they heard the sound of a small bell, the kind usually tied to the feet of dead bodies, so that if the corpse comes back to life, it can be detected. Austin bent down and peeked through the crack in the door, and what he saw shook him to the core. A rotting, decayed foot was right outside. Suddenly, there were loud bangs on the door. They quickly dragged a heavy cupboard and blocked the door with it. Moments later, the sound stopped, and everything went silent. But the silence felt like the warning before a big storm. As soon as Austin opened the door, he was horrified. His father, Tommy, was lying on the ground, badly beaten, with even his ribs broken. In a trembling voice, he said, "This is all the doing of that woman's corpse. Her eyes, they were watching me. She has come back for revenge." Actually, during the autopsy, Tommy had cut open the ribs of that same woman. Now the situation was getting worse. Out of fear, both of them returned to the autopsy room to find a solution. But what they saw there was even more terrifying. Everything that had been removed from the woman's body had rotted within minutes. But whatever was still inside her body, it was still completely fresh, untouched. They thought it was best to burn the body now. As soon as they mentioned this, the door of the autopsy room shut by itself. Tommy felt that saving their lives would now be difficult. He immediately grabbed a fire axe and started attacking the door. Somehow, he was making a small escape route when suddenly the corpse, whose nose and mouth were stitched shut, crawled out from the icebox and blocked the door. There was no way left to escape. They tried to burn the body right there, but before the fire could even reach the corpse, the entire room was engulfed in flames. Somehow, both of them managed to save their lives. But later, when they looked at the body, they saw that the fire had not affected it at all. Just then, they heard another sound from behind. Tommy peeked through the gap in the door and saw that the elevator had started moving. A ray of hope lit up, and both of them ran towards it. Austin picked up the fire axe again. As they approached the elevator, that same bell sound echoed through the corridor once more. With every breath, the sound was coming closer and closer. Austin's face turned pale. Tom gathered his courage, gripped the fire axe tightly, and got ready for the final battle. Just then, as if someone had heard their desperate cries, the elevator door opened. Both of them rushed inside. But the story didn't end there. It felt like that ghost woman had control over everything. As soon as the elevator started going up, the power went out again, and the shadow of that stitched-faced corpse appeared right in front of the elevator doors. Austin immediately swung the fire axe at the shadow. The shadow standing in front collapsed to the ground and screamed in pain. When Austin went closer to look, he was shocked beyond belief. It was none other than his own girlfriend. Austin's heart shattered. If only he hadn't called her there, she would still be alive. He couldn't believe he had lost his love by his own hands. Meanwhile, thick smoke quickly filled the elevator, making the atmosphere even more mysterious. Father and son, driven by curiosity, moved towards the source, but suddenly some blurry shadows passed right in front of them. Darkness surrounded them. They couldn't even see their own hands. Suddenly, Tommy, Austin's father, screamed. When Austin searched for his father, he found him lying unconscious on the ground. The ghost woman had attacked again. Somehow, Austin picked him up and ran to the post-mortem room to save their lives. It was now clear that this wasn't an ordinary spirit. This woman was far more powerful. Perhaps the only way to end her revenge was to discover the real cause of her death. With Tommy's help, Austin extracted a small portion of the corpse's brain and placed it under a microscope. What they saw was terrifying. The woman was still somehow alive. Tommy suspected there was some mysterious element in her body that wasn't letting her die completely. At that moment, Austin found a piece of cloth with some strange writing on it. When he unfolded it, it read, Leviticus 20.7, a line from the Bible that said, "Anyone who practices witchcraft will eventually be destroyed by their own deeds." There was another number written on the cloth, 10693, referring to around 300 years ago, a time when society, due to narrow-mindedness and false accusations, labeled women as witches. Tommy, being a student of history, knew that in reality, there was no such thing as witches during that period, but many innocent women were brutally killed without any reason. This woman was probably one of them. Her anger and suffering had still not found peace. Now Tommy and Austin clearly understood that all this was connected to a religious and historical tragedy. But even after knowing the truth, the spirit's thirst for revenge was not over. Just then, there was a loud noise at the door again. Austin kept trying to stop it, but Tommy slowly walked toward the woman's corpse and started mumbling something. He was surrendering himself to the spirit so that his son could be saved. Within seconds, Tommy screamed in pain and collapsed to the floor. He pointed toward the ground where a knife was lying. Austin understood everything, and with tears in his eyes, he plunged the knife into his father's chest. As soon as he did that, all the wounds on the woman's corpse began to heal slowly. Her eyes began to shine again. The room lights came back on, and it seemed like everything had returned to normal. Just then, a familiar voice came from outside, the police, saying that the fallen tree had been removed. Austin was asked to try opening the iron door, but it made no difference. The woman's spirit had, after all, not spared the entire family. Everything that Austin experienced was nothing but a deep and terrifying illusion. Open your heart and let the light in. It was merely a trick of the mind, but its effect was so real that it could drive anyone insane. The next morning, as soon as the police were informed, they arrived at the scene immediately. But the shocking part was that there had been no storm the previous night, no tree had fallen in the yard, and the body kept in the freezer showed no signs of movement. All those incidents were just a dangerous hallucination. As the forensic team continued their investigation, the marks found in Tommy's house strongly resembled those from the old Douglas family case. Another unsolved mystery had been born. Now, the mysterious woman whose corpse looked decades old was sent for further examination to the Science Research Department at Virginia University. But as soon as they transferred her into the van, an eerie, ghostly voice started playing on the radio during the journey. Slowly, the camera moves toward the body, and as her foot appears on the screen, the story begins to revolve around a psychological illusion, the crimes linked to history, and a father's sacrifice. With this, the story ends here. Let me know your thoughts. Also, subscribe to this channel for more horror stories like this.